I've prepared this video for those who don't feel comfortable playing with black pieces in chess. In this video I will show you a variant with the Sicilian opening that will give you a big advantage. If you don't want this to be you, subscribe and like the video. After e4 c5 knight f3 we play e6 to open the way for our bishop and queen. After this move, the opponent usually advances his pawn to square d4. We take it, then the opponent takes it with his knight. Our critical move here is bishop c5. Bishop c5 is a very unknown move. Only 5% of the players prefer this position. Let me also say that it is a very powerful move even if the opponent is high ELO. There are high ELO players who play this opening. Our opponent often prefers to improve his knight here. At this point, when we come to queen b6, we start to create problems for our opponent. Especially if you are playing at low ELO, your opponent can make a blunder immediately. Your opponent won't want to defend with the bishop since they will think the pawn on b2 is hanging. If they retreat the knight, the pawn on f2 becomes unprotected, leading to a checkmate. The opponent can say that this is why I should move my other knight back and defend. But here is a move that will cause a big problem for the opponent. As you can see, the pawn on f2 is unprotected. After moving e5, the opponent moves his knight to square f5 and holds the checkmate. Here we push our pawn to f3. Here the opponent will either lose his knight or the game will end. As you can see, if your opponent chooses bad moves here, he can easily get into trouble almost before the game starts. Let's analyze our opponent's bishop e3 move here. Here our opponent can play this move without realizing that the b2 pawn is hanging, but it is not good to capture the b2 pawn. After playing knight b5, the opponent wants to take the bishop and also wants to fork with knight c7. When we take the bishop on e3 there is a sneaky move here for white. After the rook on b2 there is no square left for the queen to escape. But with the moves I will show you we have a very high winning rate in this position. We can't take the pawn on b2, so what do? Here we advance our knight to square c6 and increase the pressure. The opponent's only move here is knight a4. I will show what to do against that move, but first let's look at the opponent's knight takes c6 move. First we take the bishop. After the opponent takes our bishop, we first take the pawn with the queen and check the king. Then we take the knight. In this variant our opponent loses the pawn. In this opening, a small wrong move by our opponent can cause problems for him. Let's go back to the move knight a4. After knight a4 we check with the queen. The opponent will most probably play c3 here. Bishop takes d4. Bishop takes d4. Knight d4. He can't take with the pawn, he has to take with the queen. We play e5. Queen goes c4. The queen has to defend the knight here. We want to play d6, open up our bishop and attack the queen with our bishop. He can check before we attack the queen. After the exchange we don't play bishop b7. We advance our king e7. In this position, black's winning rate is 62%. I have shown the variant where the opponent develops his knight. Now let's analyze the variant where the opponent develops his bishop. Our opponent is not only looking to improve their position but may also be considering playing the move e6. Our move remains the same. After the queen b6, we put pressure on the b2 pawn. If the opponent develops his knight here, we develop our knight and get into the position I explained. Let's analyze the variant where the opponent pushes his pawn to square b3. They often play this move. Here again we develop our knight and attack the opponent's piece with 3 pieces while he defends with 2 pieces. If white plays c3, we bring our other knight into the game and want to take the e4 pawn. Looking at this position in detail, we have more pieces developed even though white played the first move. If white plays f3 and defends his pawn, there is no piece left to protect the bishop on e3. So we play e5. If our opponent makes a mistake and turns his knight to c2, he will lose a piece. The only move the opponent can play here is to take knight c6. Here we take the opponent's bishop and take the advantage position. After knight to f6 our opponent may play bishop d3, let's analyze that variant. Knight takes d4. Our opponent takes the knight with his pawn. We take the opponent's pawn with the bishop. We took revenge for our bishop with the queen. Now we attack the opponent's rook. If the knight plays a3 and defends his rook, our opponent has to say goodbye to his knight after b4. If the opponent places his knight on square d2, he has to say goodbye to his bishop.